The power of silence. The deepest teaching in meditation. Silence is the first home we ever knew. Before breath gathered its rhythm, before a name wrapped itself around us, before the mind learned to divide the world into this and that, there was only a vast stillness holding us like a gentle tide. But as life unfolded, noise crept in. Not just the noise around us, but the noise within us, the restless churn of desires, plans, regrets, and questions that rarely settle long enough for us to truly hear ourselves. In the modern world, silence has almost become a stranger. We fill every empty space with sound, every pause with distraction, every quiet moment with something to keep us from meeting what waits inside. Yet silence remains patient. It does not knock loudly. It simply waits, like a mountain, unmoved by seasons, like the deep ocean beneath the storm-tossed waves. And when we finally turn toward it, when we dare to listen, we begin to discover that silence is not the absence of something. It is the presence of something subtle and profound. It is the doorway through which life speaks in its original language. In meditation, silence becomes more than a retreat from the world. It becomes a teacher, one that does not lecture, does not demand, does not promise miracles. It simply reveals, and what it reveals can change the way we see everything. The nature of suffering, the fragile beauty of impermanence, the quiet wisdom of letting go. To sit in silence is to sit with ourselves without armor, without pretense, without escape. It is to allow the mind to soften enough for truth to rise, like the moon emerging from behind a drifting cloud. This journey into silence is not about escaping the world, but learning how to move through it with clarity and compassion. It is not about shutting out sound, but rediscovering the deep listening beneath the surface of all things. And in this listening, we begin to understand that silence is not empty. It is full of understanding, full of space, full of the possibility of awakening. Let us walk now into that silence, slowly, like one stepping into a sacred forest at dusk. Let the noise of the world fade behind us. Let the breath become our guide, and let silence show us what it has been whispering all along. Silence teaches by revealing what we often try to avoid. When we first sit down to meditate, the world grows unusually loud. A hum of distant traffic, the ticking of a clock, the subtle movements of the body, sounds that have always been there suddenly step forward as if they too wish to be acknowledged. But soon, another kind of sound rises from within, the endless commentary of the mind. This inner voice, which we assume to be ourselves, rarely stops speaking. It judges, anticipates, remembers, fantasizes. It clings to imaginary futures and replays unfinished pasts. And when we sit in silence, this voice becomes like a lantern in a dark cave. It illuminates everything we have not yet dared to face. Old wounds resurface, unexpressed fears stir, desires begin tugging for attention. Silence at first can feel overwhelming, but this overwhelm is not a sign of failure. It is the beginning of seeing. The noise within us is not a flaw. It is a message. Every restless thought points to a longing. Every wave of emotion points to something unhealed or unexamined. And silence brings these waves to the surface, not to torment us, but to free us. Imagine a pond that has been stirred by a storm. The mud rises, the water clouds, the surface grows chaotic. But the pond is not broken. If left undisturbed, it will begin to settle. The mud will sink, the water will clear. Meditation is the act of allowing the pond of the mind to settle in its own time. Silence teaches patience, not the kind of patience that waits for something to happen, but the patience that understands things unfold according to their nature. The mind wants immediate calm. It wants instant clarity. But silence is not a servant to our demands. It blooms slowly, like a lotus rising from murky water, opening only when conditions are right. As we sit, breath by breath, we begin to realize that silence is not something we create. It is something we uncover. Beneath every thought, beneath every emotion, beneath every storm, silence is already there, steady, unmoving, like the earth beneath our feet. In this stillness, something shifts. For perhaps the first time, we see thoughts not as commands, but as passing events. A thought arises, lingers, dissolves. Another arises, lingers, dissolves. We start to recognize the impermanence of everything that once felt solid. What once held power over us begins to soften. The mind that once pulled us in 1,000 directions begins to reveal its patterns. We see how fear disguises itself as certainty, how desire dresses itself as necessity, how anger camouflages itself as righteousness. This seeing is the beginning of freedom. Silence does not ask us to suppress anything. It does not demand that we force the mind to stop thinking. Instead, it invites us to watch with kindness, to see thoughts as clouds drifting across the sky of awareness, to witness emotions rise like storms and pass like storms, to understand that we are not the weather but the space in which the weather occurs. As this understanding deepens, a new kind of listening arises, a listening not with the ears but with the whole being. We begin to hear the subtle qualities of experience, the warmth beneath the breath, the space between sounds, the tenderness hidden beneath our own defenses. We begin to sense the quiet pulse of life moving through every moment. And as silence deepens, we discover something even more profound. The self we cling to so tightly, the self we defend and embellish, the self we fear losing. It begins to loosen its grip. In silence, the edges of the self soften. The boundaries we draw between ourselves and the world become less rigid. We begin to see that the self is not a solid thing, but a process, a flow, a series of conditions coming together and dissolving again. Silence does not erase the self. It simply reveals its ever-changing nature. And in this revelation, suffering begins to unravel. The things we once resisted no longer seem so threatening. The things we once chased no longer seem so essential. The world becomes less sharp, less divided, more spacious. This spaciousness is not emptiness in the ordinary sense. It is fullness, a fullness that does not depend on possession, achievement, or control. It is the fullness of being alive, awake, attentive to the miracle of each moment. Silence teaches that peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of understanding. And understanding grows in the soil of stillness. As the journey into silence continues, we begin to uncover a deeper truth. Silence is not merely an experience in meditation. It is a way of relating to life. The stillness we touch on the cushion is the same stillness that lives beneath every moment of our day. It is present when we walk, when we speak, when we listen, when we work, when we love. Silence becomes a companion rather than a destination. In the rush of life, we often believe that clarity is found in doing more, knowing more, controlling more. But silence reveals another path, a path of letting go. Letting go does not mean rejecting the world or abandoning responsibility. It means releasing the tightness with which we hold things. It means recognizing that grasping creates suffering, and that loosening the grasp creates space for wisdom. Think of the way we hold our breath without realizing it when we feel stressed or afraid. The body tenses, the mind tightens, and the world narrows. In silence, we notice this. We feel the contraction, and through gentle awareness, we soften. This softening is not weakness, it is strength born from understanding the nature of things. Silence shows us the weight we carry. Expectations, regrets, the pressure to become someone, the fear of not being enough. All of it accumulates like stones in a backpack. Through stillness, we begin to take those stones out one by one. Not because someone tells us to, but because we see clearly that we no longer need to carry them. In this lightened state, we begin to notice things we once ignored. The way the morning light moves across a wall, the feeling of wind brushing the skin, the delicate pause before a bird sings, the quiet joy of simply breathing. Silence heightens sensitivity, not in a fragile way, but in a grounded, embodied way. We begin to participate in life rather than racing through it. This participation deepens our compassion, because when we sit in silence long enough, we meet our own suffering with honesty. We see the wounds, the fears, the longing that shape our lives. And from this seeing comes humility. When we understand our own pain, we understand the pain of others. Compassion arises not as an obligation, but as a natural response. It is the blooming of the heart when touched by truth. Silence teaches that compassion is not something to be forced. It grows naturally when we stop running from ourselves. And with compassion comes a shift in the way we communicate. We begin to speak less from ego and more from presence. Words become fewer, but each carries more sincerity. We listen more deeply, not just to reply, but to understand. Silence teaches us the wisdom of pauses, the clarity that arises when we allow space before speaking, the kindness that emerges when we allow others to finish their story without interruption. In this way, silence weaves itself into the fabric of daily life. It becomes the backdrop of every moment, like a gentle presence, guiding us toward greater understanding. Yet silence is not always peaceful. Sometimes, when we are very still, the truths we encounter are uncomfortable. We may see patterns of behavior that harm ourselves or others. We may recognize attachments we cling to despite their cost. We may face fears we have avoided for years. Silence does not hide these truths. It brings them into the light. This illumination is not punishment, it is liberation. The mind often resists this process. It searches for distraction, something to cover the discomfort. But if we remain present, if we allow silence to hold us even when the mind trembles, something remarkable happens. Fear loses its authority. The stories we created around our pain begin to dissolve. What once felt unbearable becomes understood, and what is understood becomes less frightening. Silence teaches courage, not the loud, dramatic courage celebrated in stories, but the quiet courage of meeting ourselves honestly. Over time, we begin to trust silence. We trust its ability to reveal what we are ready to see. We trust its capacity to hold us gently in moments of vulnerability. We trust that the deeper we go into silence, the more life opens. This trust transforms our relationship with time. We stop hurrying toward a future we cannot control. We stop clinging to a past we cannot change. Silence roots us in the present, where life is actually happening. The present moment becomes less like a passing point and more like a home, a refuge where we can rest. In this refuge, our understanding of happiness begins to shift. Happiness is no longer tied to gain or loss, pleasure or approval. It becomes something quieter, steadier, more spacious. A contentment that arises from simply being, a joy that does not depend on the conditions around us, but on the clarity within us. And in this clarity, we begin to sense the profound interconnectedness of all beings. Silence strips away the illusions that separate us. We realize that every person we meet is carrying their own storms, their own longings, their own silent battles. This recognition softens the heart. It becomes harder to judge and easier to forgive. Harder to hold resentment and easier to release it. Silence teaches that forgiveness is not a gift to others, but a gift to ourselves. It frees the mind from the burden of anger. It opens space for peace. In this way, silence becomes the foundation of awakening. Not a sudden flash of enlightenment, but a gradual deepening of understanding, moment by moment, breath by breath. As silence becomes more intimate, we begin to encounter one of its deepest teachings, the teaching of non-self, not as a philosophical idea, but as a felt experience. In the stillness of meditation, we watch thoughts arise without choosing them. We watch emotions appear without inviting them. We watch sensations shift without controlling them. We see that everything that makes up me is in motion, constantly changing. This seeing can be unsettling at first. The sense of self feels like the anchor of our world, and silence begins to reveal that this anchor is not as solid as we believed. But as we sit with this truth, we begin to understand that the loosening of the self is not a loss. It is freedom from the tightness we have lived with for so long. The self we cling to is like a clenched fist. Silence teaches the hand to open. As this hand opens, life becomes less personal. Challenges still arise, but they do not bind us in the same way. Emotions still flow, but they do not define us. Pleasant moments still come, but we do not cling to them. Unpleasant moments still occur, but we do not fear them. We begin to see experience as a river, continuous, flowing, never fixed. This river is not ours to control. It moves according to causes and conditions, beyond our choosing. Silence teaches us to step into the river without fighting its current, to walk with life rather than push against it, to surrender not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. In this surrender, we discover resilience, not the resilience that resists, but the resilience that adapts. The resilience of water, soft yet powerful, flexible yet unstoppable. Silence shapes us into beings who can bend without breaking, who can stand without hardening, who can love without grasping. And love itself transforms. It becomes less possessive, less demanding. It becomes spacious, tender, patient, the kind of love that wishes well, not only for those who benefit us, but for all beings, even those who hurt us. Silence reveals that love is not a transaction, but a natural expression of a heart that has tasted freedom. As this love expands, so does wisdom. Not the wisdom of intellect, but the wisdom of direct seeing. We begin to understand the nature of impermanence, not as an idea, but as a constant companion. Everything changes: the body, the mind, the world, relationships, fortunes, seasons of life. In silence, this truth becomes gentle rather than frightening. Impermanence becomes the reason we cherish moments, the reason we appreciate the fragile beauty of existence. And in this appreciation, gratitude arises effortlessly. Gratitude for breath, gratitude for awareness, gratitude for the chance to wake up in this lifetime, even for a moment. Gratitude not because life is perfect, but because life is precious. Silence teaches that every moment is a chance to begin again. Each breath is a doorway. Each pause is an invitation. Each experience is a teacher. And when we understand this, meditation is no longer something we do. It becomes the way we live. Living with silence does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means entering the world with clarity. It means responding rather than reacting. It means seeing things as they are rather than as we fear or desire them to be. It means walking through life with an open heart, aware of suffering, but not overwhelmed by it, aware of beauty, but not clinging to it. This way of living is a gift not only to ourselves, but to everyone we meet. Our presence becomes a refuge. Our listening becomes healing. Our steadiness becomes encouragement. Our silence becomes a blessing. In this silence, we begin to sense a profound truth, that awakening is not something far away. It is not reserved for monks in distant forests or sages sitting on mountaintops. It is here, in this moment, in this breath, in this awareness. Awakening is the simple yet profound recognition of what has always been present beneath the noise. Silence is the gateway. Silence is the path. Silence is the destination. And the deeper we go, the more we realize that silence is not something we enter. It is what we are. Conclusion. The power of silence is not found in escaping the world, but in meeting it fully. It is the gentle, patient teacher that waits within each breath, offering clarity in confusion, peace in turmoil, compassion in the face of suffering. Silence shows us who we are, beneath our fears, beneath our stories, beneath the endless noise of the mind. It guides us back to the simplicity of being alive, moment by moment, with awareness and tenderness. As you walk forward from here, may silence accompany you. May it steady your steps. May it soften your heart. May it remind you that peace is never far. It lives within you, waiting for your attention. And whenever the world feels overwhelming, whenever the mind grows loud, whenever the heart feels heavy, may you remember that you can return to silence again and again as to a trusted friend. If the reflections shared here have touched you, if this journey into stillness has offered even a moment of clarity, consider joining this channel. There is more to explore together, more teachings, more stories, more opportunities to walk this path of awakening with presence and compassion. Your presence here supports the continuation of these offerings, and together we can cultivate a space of peace in a noisy world. May you be peaceful. May you be free.